of my favourite examples that I bring up every time we come to the Futures lectures, because what I'm saying there on the first point is that this promise of technology, this promise of massive change to our lives because of the adoption of new technologies, is very seductive. But often there is no evidence for it. And here are three cases in point. First of all, remote working. Remote working, according to a TUC report now going back 6 or 7 years, we were told was going to absolutely revolutionise the way that work happens. That most people would work at home, particularly at the lower skilled, lower paid end of the working market. It's never ever happened. Video conferencing technology. Video conferencing technology has been the next big thing in all the years that I've been in the technology industry, and that's quite a lot. There's always been somebody saying to me, video conferencing is going to be the next big thing. Video conferencing is something to invest in, and it never happens, and it never will happen. And more controversially perhaps, and in more of a modern era, e-learning. We've been talking at the Futures Conference for many years about e-learning. We've been talking about how modern technologies, whether they're social networking technologies or whether they're just simple remote working technologies, will allow us to do things with learning that we've never been able to do before. Will make it much easier for the learner. It's not happened. We've been trying to do these things for getting on for 20 years, and we're still not seeing a massive impact on the way that we're doing it. There is an impact because here we are, and we're connected to the network, and we're connected to displays and so on, so things do change, but it's not fundamentally changing the way education happens. For example, on the e-learning, I say if this was working by now, we should be a planet full of geniuses. Whereas the truth of it is, I don't even know whether it is geniuses or whether it should be GDI. I have no idea. So we haven't actually managed to change the education system in such a way that it's having this fantastic effect. If anything, from what I see in students from year to year, present company accepted, standards tend to hover along at about the same point, or potentially even in some places standards appear immediately lower. So we should be seeing a massive uptick. We should be seeing people information in this space age, fibre optic kind of massive way, and we're not. And that kind of concerns me as to why are we saying these things, and why are we saying these things every year when we never see any evidence for it. So what I think you should do when you're looking at the argument for the next technology, the argument for what's going to revolutionise our lives, is you should be saying, well, actually, how do I assess this? How do I form a judgment about whether this technology will be the right thing? Do I just look at the statistics of the technology? Do I look at the fancy technology involved? Or do I consider how people will actually interact with this technology? If you can consider how people will actually interact with it, if you can understand how people behave, then you can begin to understand technologies. You can also begin to understand why certain technologies don't work. I also think that if we can understand what people are doing today, if we can look at how people interact, how people use technologies to interact, if we can see where the changes are occurring in people's lives, outside of all of the hype, if you can actually look at the way you interface with technology and understand what's going on today, why it's going on today, then you're in a position to have a better stab at what the likely future is going to be. Without all of the scaremongering, without all of the statistical stuff about everything is doubling every 72 hours and all of that, if you can actually start to understand how technology impacts on our lives today, you can use that as a basis to say where we're going to go tomorrow. And that's the key thing with understanding technology. For example, who says printing's dead? For the last 5 or 6 years, one of the key things that's been going on within the printing industry, where I'm working in the digital printing industry particularly, is we've seen a migration of a lot of work from direct mail and commercial marketing print into websites, into email campaigns, and into social networking marketing, targeted marketing on Facebook and so on. So we've seen a general shift of work away from printing and into electronic technologies. And there was a big movement towards this some years ago, based on the idea that to send an email to someone was basically a fraction of a penny, and to send a good mail piece to somebody is generally going to cost you £1 or more. And so there was a very strong business case for dumping the print and going with the email, and that was going to save a lot of money. And interestingly now, 6 years or so later, most reports that I've read from various bodies around on the internet say that companies that have decided to use electronic marketing instead of print have had no cost saving at all. There's been no cost saving there.
It just appears by waving a wand or through Santeria or some like that.